I think it's actually yeah, but actually quite pleased with that. You might wonder why he was only on 20, and why Franklin has to go 100. What was that about? But you know, he was, for all the sense, helped keep alive a story that's still evolving. And I think in his vices, in his moments of grace and his moments of rage, he in many ways is far more representative of the broader American story than founding fathers are.
I think self-examination is good. It's not something Andrew Jackson was good at. And he would have been perhaps a better man, though perhaps not a better president, if he had done more self-examination himself. But I think because Jackson intersects and even commands American history in so many places, when we look at Jackson,
Or that his personality, believed very much that most things were better run if he were in charge. Safest way for most things and his view of power and democracy and of America was that we would be in peril if we allowed any one group, bankers, Southerners, any particular interest to exert too great an influence over the process. Again, remember this word, balance. The idea that a republic is a set ecosystem of political interest, and that we should never allow any one particular interest to dominate too much. He intuitively understood that. So that was part of the reason he took on the bank. It was part of the reason he took on the radical Southerners. It was part of the reason he didn't like having ministers involved in politics. He would have agreements with a matter of irrationality.
Jackson believed, and this was very typical of his time, was very conscious of the United States as an exception, as a novel experiment. And he said, we are going to prove to the rest of the world that a Republican government, a government by the people, in the people's interest, works. Not only that it works, but
he's angry, when he's emotional, you see what comes out, biblical quotations. Someone who betrays him is always a Judas. He does, like a catechism, he does a call and response. What is an American? An American is a freeborn citizen. That was what he drew on. He was not Thomas Jefferson, sitting around discussing the European document. He was not writing his lawyer-like briefs and federal papers. He wasn't John Quincy Adams composing Latin songs. None of that was him. But he was able, quite moving, given where he came from, he was able to tap into those intellectual tributaries as they came down to form the river of politics. And that's what he was. He was trying to become the best captain that had ever sailed on the river of American politics. One test for how a president stacks up in history is what do their successors think of him? And it's funny, when you read about presidents talking about other presidents, what you find is that mostly they see if they wish to be seen. But Jackson brings together an extraordinary number of disparate presidents. The Jefferson versus Hamilton battles and Jackson's versus the economic interests of his country. So you have this ongoing drama where presidents amid crisis, presidents seeking examples of strength, sent for Jackson. And Harry Truman was, I think we can say it here, Harry Truman had a man crush on Andrew Jackson. Don't tell me about it. He came over, he was in charge of designing a statue for Jackson County over in Kansas City. And he drove to the home and actually measured Jackson's clothes to make sure the statue was historically accurate. That doesn't happen. Presidents don't measure other guys' clothes. So Jackson loomed incredibly large in his imagination. Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman. And those were presidents who knew something about.
And oh, what he yearns for is one honest man, like himself.
He represented the best of us and the worst of us. He was one of the great architects and articulators of the democratic promise, and yet was complicit in some of the great tragedies in American history. But his sins were not unique. They were the nation's sins. And I think our reaction to Jackson as a lightning rod is in part a reaction to ourselves. We know we're capable of great evil, when we're being honest, and hopefully we're capable of great good. He was both. Jackson's presidency proved that almost anyone could become president. It was the first time that the office seemed open outside a certain class and caste people. He built what became the modern Democratic Party, the first great, truly national party. He understood political communication. He would have loved the internet. Would have loved to be able to post his latest album, sense of outrage.
Jackson loved progress. The idea of the United States expanding geographically, of developing economically, of Americans acquiring greater and greater material prosperity, but also the things that prosperity can bring. Greater education, flourishing of the arts, of culture, things themselves.
Jackson became the president of a country that was still largely aristocratic in its distribution of powers. There was a growing middle class, but the middle class had not yet found a way to fully take its share of political power. The first 6 American presidents were either Virginia planters or Addison's combatants. The idea that Andrew Jackson, who had been born to a father he never knew, his family wiped out in the Revolution. The idea that this man could rise to president was at once an invigorating and disturbing thing. For John Adams and Clay, one of the more established people. His presidency announced that democracy was truly and was going away.
Jackson, waking up today, would look at the United States as the certainly the most powerful, in some ways the most prosperous and progressive country in the world. He'd say, see, I told you so. On the other hand, he probably would be appalled by the concentrations of economic power and the political power, the political leverage that comes from that. That was really what Jackson was opposed to with the banks. He was not opposed to people getting rich. He was not opposed to people lending each other money. What he was opposed to were selfish purposes. I think Jackson today might look around and see plenty of examples to show that that was true.
Jackson was arguably the first modern. He understood the veto power. He understood that he had to go around Congress to the people. He understood that popular support could make things happen in Washington that would not happen without it. And in that sense, his bond with supporters who might not be right in front of him, but who read about it, who sat critically important. Politics in his mind was not simply something that happened at a given election.
Or use it to sound like the lines that Trump uses to play it.
Well, that's what.
Our greatest president says that, understood that quite Jacksonian.
Indian removal is his legacy. The strong presidency that we have today is largely his legacy. The two-party system is his legacy. Many of the campaign groups that we have today, updated as the media has are his legacy. The exertion of presidential powers, the focus on the personality of the president, the claim that the president is somehow not really the chief executive, but the champion of the people against the bad guys, whoever the bad guys are. All this is
hard to find plates, because, you know, they typically the things in that list.
Right.